We are, however, going to get the first race of two here this weekend underway, with a few cars starting from the pit lane. At least that will keep them out of trouble at the first corner. The safety car peels its way into the pit lane. At 40 minutes are on the clock, the lights go out, and we're away and racing with Sasha Kakad leading the charge in the wet tired shod Audi up towards Oulton corner for the first time. Rich Mason at the wheel of the number 22 Greystone Lamborghini just blends out of the throttle to avoid getting too close to anybody, and then almost just ran a little bit wide actually onto the damp curb heading out of Old Hall. But they're all safely down in towards Cascades for the first time, with Sasha Kakad looking to try and see if he can build an advantage. He'll also be looking towards the skies and what the clouds are doing, because he will be hoping that rain starts to fall, because he knows he's on the wet tyre, which, as he said on the grid to Amber Jones earlier on, is perhaps not the best call at this stage, but they were stuck with it. And had they have come into the pit lane, they'd have been stuck in the pit lane and had to go off the very back of the field like everybody else had to do who opted to come in and change their tyres. So there is Paul Bailey, followed by James Guess, who was already making progress. So those are two of the four cars that were stranded rather in the pit lane. But now Simon Orange is beginning to close in on the Audi. It hasn't taken long for Simon Orange to build the temperature into the slick tyre that he is on, and he will try and close in. And Andre Borodin at the moment is in the podium paying places at the wheel of his Greystone McLaren. So had a good qualifying, did Andre Borodin, his best qualifying ever in GT Cup. The lead of Group GTH, those are the two cars just heading up Clay Hill now. Tim Docker fighting away with the car that sits behind him, which is going to be Phil Carter. But for the lead of the race, Audi from McLaren first and second, and Simon Orange, we believe, is on slick tyres. The Make Happen Racing car of Stephen Walton, even now, just doesn't seem to be up to full pace. So I wondered if they were leaving it till the last possible moment to get the car onto slick tyres. But it does make me wonder if there's some sort of mechanical issue with that car, because it's still rather slow around the circuit. Out of Old Hall corner, first lap completed, order remains the same. Dan Dazil is looking to try and get the overlap on Andre Borodin to squeeze the Ferrari through into third place, and I think he made it stick there in the background. So it's Audi from McLaren, and it is now yet Ferrari. So Dan Dazil is up into third position at the wheel of the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo Spec car. A few little spits of rain again on the cameras there, and windscreen wipers on Sasha Kakad's car, which again does suggest, this part of the circuit at least, there's a few little spits of rain once more. Now that plays into the hands of the Audi and does not play into the hands of the newly liveried car from Orange Racing, powered by JMH, in the hands of Simon Orange. So over Hilltop they come. Simon Orange gets a good exit this time. Sasha Kakad has got the inside line heading in towards the braking area for Hislop, so he's still going to keep the Audi where it needs to be in the lead of the race. And it's a puncture for the number 69 car. So came out of the pit lane having changed its tyres, but there's a puncture on the right rear by the look of things, and that is certainly not ideal for poor old Simon Walton. That car that is second in Group GTH in the championship at the moment, limping its way back round in towards the pit lane area. See the rain falling at that part of the circuit again there, and there is bits of rubber as well being flipped up, so that's from the tyre starting to delaminate on the Make Happen Racing car, leaving a bit of debris around the track. He would have made it back into the pit lane, but for the lead of the race, this is the opportunity for Simon Orange. He gets a really good run on Sasha Kakad in the Audi, and as they head up towards Old Hall corner, he jinks one way, jinks the other, but at the moment can't find his way through. A car on wet tyres, still keeping the car on slicks at bay at the moment, and all of the time edging closer to them is the car that leads in Group GTC, which is going to be Dan Dazil. So this is first, second and third all together at the moment along the straight lakeside that brings them up towards the daunting Island Bend. And it's still Audi from McLaren, from Ferrari, the three of them within a second of each other. They head on towards the break and turn their way through Shell Oils. And since moving up to third place, Dan Dazil has really closed in. Simon Orange will be conscious that he's quicker, needs to get on with the job now because he's been caught from the car behind, but it's two cars in Group GT3 getting caught by the car that leads Group GTC at the moment. And again, Simon Orange looks to try and get the overlap on Sasha Kakad. He looks one way, looks the other. Is he going to prise the door open at Hislops? No. Still great defensive work by Sasha Kakad. And right away around the outside goes Dan Dazil up into second place. Simon Orange looking to take the lead. Drops from second down into third. Brilliant driving from Dan Dazil. Back uphill towards Druids, daunting double apex right-hander. Look at the rain at this part of the circuit. This is really going to favour the Audi. And you can see all of a sudden the track has got very, very wet at this part of the circuit. The rain is now lashing down, and that is really going to hamper the car on slick tyres. Andrei Borodin loses 4th place, and off and into the background, a big, big accident by the look of things, and I think that might be Rich Mason that's had the off. Car speared round coming out of Druids corner. I saw him head straight into the barriers on the right-hand side, but that was tricky conditions there round through Druids, and it certainly caught out the car in the background of Rich Mason, who speared off to the right-hand side, and by the look of things made heavy contact with the barriers. Race continues for the meantime. Here comes Paul Bailey. Remember, we've still got that pit window to worry about as well. Pit window opens for the first batch of cars between the 19th and the 23rd minute of the race, as it's a 40-minute race. That's going to be the cars in Group GTO and Group GT3. And for those that are running Group GTC and Group GTH for this weekend, it's between the 23rd and the 28th minute of the race. Safety car is being deployed. So Sasha Kakad leads Dan Dazil, and then Simon Orange, who's there in 3rd place. It's going to be Morgan Short that's up into 4th. Andrei Borodin, number 24, is 5th, but I'm afraid it looks as though we are going to have the red flags coming out. Yeah, red lights are on, and by the look of things, I would imagine a mixture of the deteriorating conditions and also whatever happened to poor old Rich Mason. So he didn't see the impact with the barriers, but the angle that the car took as it came out of Druids, I would imagine, was a significant incident. So we will wait and hopefully get some confirmation as to exactly what happened there, because it was out of shot, so it'd be unfair to comment at this stage. So you can see the rain falling now. We've had really spits of rain all weekend. It's been never heavy rain at any point. It's always been a light shower or a slightly heavier shower, but we've never had actual what I would class as full rain. But now you can see, for our poor old marshals, it's the rain but also the wind they need to deal with now as well. So we bring this race to a halt, and that is going to mean that everybody will line up back on the grid once more, and we will get some sort of restart at some stage. Obviously, what we first of all need to do is deal with the incident there at Druids. All of the cars are being waved back onto the grid. The red flag came out with 34 minutes and 4 seconds remaining on the clock, so we'd only had about 6 minutes of the race. And whilst most of the cars are now waiting to line back up on the grid, it looks as though Paul Bailey, who I think originally on the outlap came out on wet tyres, opted to come in and change to slicks, which then meant he had to start from the pit lane. It's now raining, so understandably what he's opted to do again is come back in on those slick tyres in the deteriorating conditions and swap back onto wets, which might mean that for the second time when we get the restart underway, he'll have to start from the pit lane once more. But that is not necessarily a bad thing when the conditions are tricky. It just keeps you away from that pack to a degree. So see the trees blowing in the background of the shot. All of the umbrellas largely pointing in the right direction still at the moment, but it doesn't look as though it's really... You need the brolly to keep you dry, but yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do when you're battling with the wind that we've got here today. Typical British summer, isn't it? So it's just going to take a while, I would imagine, to clear this incident up. We've got hopefully all the cars lined up there on the grid. I'm sure Piers and Amber might head down onto the grid to not get any reaction about the incident, but just to chat to some of the drivers about how enormously quickly those conditions change there, and you know how for maybe Sasha Kaked, he was struggling at the early part of the race, but just before the red flag came out, he got the right tyres on, and in stark contrast, Simon Orange, who I think started on the slick tyre and couldn't pick up the lead of the race, all of a sudden his sort of car went away from him as the rain started to fall. So I think there might be plenty of opportunity for them to gauge some reaction from the drivers, because I think it might be a while just before we are able to get the incident cleared up down there at Druids. So driver's the most important thing, then we deal with the car and any sweeping up. Of course there may well be some circuit furniture that's been damaged as well, so whether that be either rector cell barriers or tyres, or of course the Armco barriers which line the edges and the perimeters of the circuit. And then once all of that is done, then we can go racing once more, but that might be a few moments away as yet. Now, coming into this weekend, leading the championship overall was the number 28 Lamborghini of Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley for this weekend. We did see James Dorlin out last time out at Snetterton. That car leads the championship overall. When I say the championship, I mean when you look across all of the groups, that has the highest number of points. That was on 235 points coming into this weekend, and as a result of leading championship overall, it also leads Group GTO, which is for the open specification cars. So those are cars that are low volume manufactured cars, or cars that are running to GT2 or GTE specifications, or modified challenge cars, or in the case of Paul Bailey's, a GT3 spec car, but you take all the air restrictors and everything else off it, so it doesn't comply with the balance of performance, so it moves into Group GTO. Second in the championship standings was the car that leads Group GTH. Now that's for the GT4 compliant cars, and that was the Feathers Motorsport number 82 car of James Guess and Tom Canning that share that car. They are second in the overall championship standings. Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley, 235 points. It's 207 for James Guess and Tom Canning. And then third in the overall championship standings is the car that leads the Group GT3 standings overall, and was leading that race before the red flag came out. That was the Sasha Kakad and Hugo Cook Audi R8 GT3 Evo 2. That is on 204 championship points. Now, quite close for second and third in the championship, with Paul Bailey the best point part of 28 points ahead. But Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley for this weekend, there's only 2 cars entered in Group GTO, so they can't claim the usual 25 points for a win in their group. They are 7 points less than that. They can only claim 18 points if they win their group, because there's only 2 entrants in it, so you end up with a reduced number of championship points. So good job they've got that little buffer, because that may well be eroded over the course of this weekend. Who's fourth in the championship at the moment? Well, fourth in the championship is the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which is shared for this weekend by Charlotte Gilbert and Morgan Short. But we have seen Warren Gilbert and Gilbert Yates drive that car over the course of the weekend. They are on 202 championship points. It is the car that scores a point, not the drivers, so it's the number 2 car that's accumulated all of those points, regardless of who's been driving it. And then fifth in the championship points, but they are not here at Oulton Park this weekend. It's the Drive Tac Racing with Track Focus number 50 Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo of James Wallace and Sam Mayer Lopnam. They are absent for this weekend. The car had an engine failure at Donington Park, and I think the engine that they put in has now had to go back under the arrangement and the agreement back to Mercedes, and they are waiting for that engine to be returned to them at this stage. They couldn't either get the engine back in time or couldn't turn it around in the workshop in time. They're on 188 championship points, so they will drop away. And sixth in the championship is car number 72, which is Chris Murphy at the wheel of his BMW, which is somewhat outgunned in Group GTO. Chris knows that. He's on 171 championship points, but Chris always says, I just want to race, I just want to race and have a good race with people. Doesn't matter if my car doesn't quite really fit the group that he's in. He's just happy to be out there and happy to run wheel to wheel and have some good fun. So those are the top 6 in the championship at this stage. So we're waiting for some confirmation as to the restart, and hopefully that will not be too far away.
Ninth place, number 78, Tim Docker, McLaren, Artura.
In typical fashion, now that we've had the red flag, the rain has eased a little bit. It is still raining, and hopefully that is a good sign that the circuit might just dry out again. However, it does leave that decision again for the teams for the restart as to what they want to do. They made that roll of the dice as to start on slicks or wets for the first attempt at the race. they've got that same decision to make now again. There will be another formation lap, so they could, at the end of the formation lap, quickly dive into the pits and change tyres, but that would again then leave them, by the time they've done that, probably 30 seconds, 60 seconds away from the pack that got going. So really difficult time for the teams and the drivers. And the big problem is that, of course, the teams and the drivers are on the start-finish line, so they know what's happening there. What they don't know is what's happening down at Island Bend, totally the opposite part of the circuit. And as Piers and Amber were alluding to earlier on, the way that the wind is blowing in these rain clouds today means that, yeah, it might be raining at one part of the circuit, but it could still be bone dry at the other. So it is one of those unbelievably difficult days with difficult decisions to be made as to how you set the car up, what tyres you put on it, and as was the case yesterday for most of these cars that were out testing, whatever tyre you put on at the time, it ended up being the wrong tyre about 2 or 3 minutes later on. So we'll wait and see as to what is happening with regards to that. So there's a few engines just beginning to strike up on the grid. I think what that is at the moment is just moving the cars into position, either on the grid or moving them in towards the pit lane area. So we will wait and see as to what is happening. I think actually the cars aren't being moved into position on the grid, they are being moved back into the pit lane area. So that is an indication probably they've had a look at the weather and tried to establish what the weather is doing, and are now giving everybody, for the right reasons, the opportunity to change the car onto their tyres again, onto the correct ones. So you can still see, even in the pit lane, Chris Murphy with the windscreen wiper going. There's the Top Cats Racing Morgan Short car, 24 Andre Borodin, Russ Lindsay in the 999 Porsche. You can see the pit lane filling up all of the time, and the grid that was full of cars a moment ago is now rather empty and sparse, to say the least. But at least all of the teams have got the opportunity to get the cars back up on the air jacks again. And critically, because of the length of the delay, even if the cars were on slick tyres and the track dried out, those slick tyres have got stone cold now, so at least this gives the teams the opportunity to get the cars back on the air jacks, take off the tyres that are on there, put them back in the tyre ovens that are at the back of the garages, so preheat them, whether they are wets, whether they are slicks, get them back in the ovens, build up the temperature in those tyres, and then they can bolt them back on again very, very shortly. So now let's have a quick look back at the incident. Crumbs, well, there is Richard Mason's car. He is, okay, there we can see that is a significant incident. What I can confirm is Rich Mason is out of the car. That is the most important thing. Rich has been checked over by the medical crew and is just heading back in the ambulance for further checkups, but he is absolutely fine. I can confirm that to you now. But you can see that Lamborghini has had a significant impact into the tyre barriers. The tyre barriers have done their job, as has the Armco barrier, which has eased the impact to that degree, and it has also meant that you can see circuit furniture is damaged around the car as well. So it's a case of the catch fencing, the debris fencing in the background doing its job. But this is going to be, without question, a significant delay to racing proceedings here. But for Rich Mason, who is back for the first time this season, he had engine woes earlier on this season. It's taken a while to get the car where they needed it to be, get the engine back in. That is such a disappointment for Rich Mason. But I say the main thing is he is absolutely fine, and will maybe just be feeling a little bit bruised in the morning, but he's making his way in the medical car back in towards the paddock area where he will receive further checkups. So there he is in the back of that car, and you can see even at that speed, you can see the amount of water all of a sudden that's just splashing out of the back of the medical car whilst it's travelling at the speeds it's travelling. So hopefully Rich will be feeling absolutely fine, and say that, as ever, you know, with the strength that these cars have when they're built by the manufacturers nowadays, in that case Lamborghini, with all of the safety features inside the car and the safety features that the drivers have with the hand and neck support and the crash helmet, and the way that the circuits are built now and signed off in terms of safety by Motorsport UK, with barriers and rectocell and tyre walls, all to try and minimise incidents, everything coming together there to do its job. And even the cars, you know, a lot of the damage sometimes we see on cars, it's superficial. You know, it's designed to absorb impact. So as ever, that car has done its job, the circuit furniture has done its job, and now our brilliant Oulton Park marshals and the recovery crews and the circuit staff are tasked with doing their jobs to get the circuit back into a raceable condition, which, as I say, may well be a significant delay. And when we get sometimes incidents like this where we do have a rebuild of circuit furniture to do, sometimes it does affect ultimately the timetable. And whilst GT Cup would scheduled to still have another 34 minutes of racing, and then due to be another 2 support races after that before the lunch break, sometimes what happens is we end up with a shuffle in the timetable, and we bring the lunch break forward to allow us to repair those barriers over the course of that lunch break. And then because we've started the lunch break earlier, then we get the resumption of the racing back underway at a different timetable. So I would say for the rest of the day, you know, stick with us now, because we may well be back racing again very, very shortly. However, for the rest of the day, this is highly likely now to affect the timetable. Our second race for GT Cup was scheduled to go green at 15:40, so our live coverage of that would start around about 15:25, 15:30, something like that. But that was what was scheduled. We will keep you up to date, but do keep an eye on all of our social medias as well in the meantime. So keep an eye on our Facebook and our Twitter page and Instagram, because there is likely to be some possible amendments to the timetable over the course of the day. Now, the team's still busy working away. Just because we've got no racing going on, it doesn't mean that there's no work going on in the pit lane. You can see, as ever, tyres that were on the cars, all of the control Pirelli slick tyres that they all run, have all been now largely removed from the cars and placed into the ovens at the back of the garages. Chris Murphy's car, however, in the background of the shot is just being pushed backwards by the Woodrow Motorsport team. So where are they pushing that? Are they going to push it down towards the end of the pit lane? I can still see the Ferrari is up on its air jacks at the very background of the shot as well. No, they're going to spin it round through 180 degrees and push it backwards into the garage. I think that's what they're going to do there. The Ferrari is still up on its air jacks with its tyres on at the moment, but everything else is up on the air jacks with tyres off. And what they do, you can just see at the front of the shot there, so they put the car up on the air jacks, they take the wheels off the car, and then they place underneath it dollies, as they're called, and those air jacks then get removed, and the car sits down on 4 aluminium dollies which all have little wheels on them, and they can spin the car round on a sixpence and push it backwards into the garage. So that is what makes it a lot easier for them to manoeuvre cars without tyres on. And even the lock on these cars when you're at low speed is so minimal that you always have to do 3-point turns all of the time to get them from having parked frontwards 45 degrees to the garage to getting them backwards in the garage. So dolly's much easier. You can spin it round within the length of its own car. So that's what they will be doing now. You can see the grey clouds, you can see the wind. So bearing in mind we're 1st of July, it doesn't quite feel like it at the moment. The weather actually, temperature-wise, isn't too bad. It's what, 14, 15, 16 degrees, but in the wind it feels a little bit cooler, and because you've then got the rain and the damp, it feels that little bit cooler. And the forecast was, at the beginning of the week, sunshine. However, it kept sort of flip-flopping around as to what the weather was going to do, and in all honesty I gave up looking about 48 hours to go, because every time I looked the forecast had changed again. So it was a case of it will be what it will be, and it looks as though it is, yeah, less than ideal. And even more so, it'd be better if it was full wet. It'd be better if it was a full wet weather session rather than just that continual transition from dry to damp to, as it was in that case, wet, and then it goes from wet back to damp and back to dry and then back to damp and back to dry again. It just is unstable. So it looks as though repair is still underway. The fantastic circuit maintenance staff will be working. You can see Simon Nana Pragasam, who is the clerk of the course for GT Cup, is on site there in the course car, liaising with the circuit team and marshals and officials to understand as to the work and the scale of it that needs doing. Also trying to get an estimate as to the length of repair. Now, you can't rush it, you can't compromise it. It takes as long as it takes in that respect, and hopefully at some point we'll get some resumption of the racing. Certainly plenty of people here today, because this is a supercar pageant race meeting here at Oulton Park, so it's not just GT Cup that's racing. We've got lots of other categories racing, lots of Porsches in particular, and therefore it's also the opportunity for many of the owners' clubs to come along to Oulton Park and enjoy the racing and all the off-track activities that they've got as well. So there's live music, there's car parades at the end of the day, there's BMX shows. There's even a boat on the lake here today as well. I don't think that's part of the supercar pageant, in all honesty. But yeah, it's one of those quite unique race meetings. And if you've never been to Oulton Park or any of the circuits that we visit in GT Cup, I do encourage you to come along. Oulton Park is a typical traditional circuit, parkland circuit. And yes, it's an old school circuit, as many drivers refer to it as. It's tight, it's twisty, it's challenging, it's undulating, it bites back if you make a small error, but it is such a beautiful parkland setting, and now under the ownership, as it has been for a very, very good number of years now, of Motorsport Vision, Jonathan Palmer's organisation, who also own and run Brands Hatch, Cadwell Park, Snetterton. They've also got Navarra now in Spain as well, Bedford Aerodrome. They also operate Donington Park, and there's a facility in France that they are bringing online as well. Every single circuit you go to, you know when you arrive at a Motorsport Vision circuit, because they are all beautifully maintained, highly polished, the attention to detail is stunning, and you get these unique events like Supercar Pageant, where, say, it is a family day out, you can see the kids enjoying themselves, the adults getting a bit of respite just while the children are enjoying the fairground. You can see the supercar displays in the background as well, with Porsche Club GB here as well. We've got Lamborghinis, I've seen a few Ferraris around the circuit, amongst many, many other things as well. So there's plenty to keep you busy, both on track with the racing entertainment and off track as well. Even BMX stunt shows I think we've got here today. So yes, a very different and unique event. So just while we're waiting for news with regards to the restart, of course, cars going back out there, we'll leave you in a little bit of peace for the moment. Don't disappear though, don't disappear, because as soon as we know what is going to happen with regards to any restart of this race, rest assured I will be back with you very soon. But for the moment, we'll continue to relay you some images of what's going on at Oulton Park, but we'll stop the commentary for the moment until we understand what's going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, we left you in peace for a while just until we understand what's going on here at Oulton Park following the large accident that occurred in the deteriorating conditions at Druids, where Rich Mason in the Greystone Lamborghini went off and into the barriers. The barriers doing their work and stopping the car, but the car ultimately ended up in the catch fencing and has caused significant circuit damage. Conditions still continue to deteriorate. Race control at the moment have no indication as to when, if, how we restart. So your best bet for the moment is to keep an eye on all of our social media. So whether that be the GT Cup Facebook page, the GT Cup Twitter account, or our Instagram account as well. That will give you the updates as to when we go back racing. So we're going to stop our footage for the moment here from Oulton Park and keep your eye on our socials, and that will give you an indication as to when we go back racing once more. So from GT Cup and the whole team at Oulton Park, sorry we couldn't bring you the full race that we were expecting, but the good thing is Rich Mason is fine, and hopefully we'll be back with you later on. Until then, it's goodbye.